Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Himanshu, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Ashwini, ma'am. Good afternoon, Shilpa, ma'am.
Ma'am, how many teachers are we expecting approximately?
Sir, two more teachers yet to join. They'll be joining with us within 5 minutes. They were in other meet.
Uh, Only two more teachers, ma'am.
Do
So,
we require subject? Yes, ma'am.
yes, ideally, I think it will be beneficial if all the teachers join in because the idea is that all the teachers who will be directly or indirectly associated with asset, it will be useful for them. So, all the teachers for classes 3, 5, 7, 9, all the classes that are taking asset, ideally, all the teachers should be joining in.
Gentlemen, was this discussed with you that we have to invite the teachers?
Sorry, ma'am.
Just good luck, ma'am. If any teacher is free in your department, please ask them to join in immediately for this session.
ठीक है, ma'am.
Article just give us 5 more minutes. I'll make the arrangements.
Sure.
So sorry for that. Chitrama, any other teachers are joining? You are
Yes, ma'am. Just a minute. I'm just sharing the link with them.
Pale, Ashwini ma'am, teachers are joining. Those who are free, they've asked them to join.
okay. Great. Thank you so much for that.
Do we have Himanshu here? Okay, Aarti, you have joined.
Good afternoon, Aarti ma'am,
Aarti
everyone.
ma'am, wait for 5 more minutes. More teachers are joining.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Sure. So what we can do is we can try to add all the team members who are free at this moment of time, and rest. Yeah, we are going to record it, but we must share it with the entire team later so that everybody is prepared and we all are on the same page. I think we can start now. Aarti, your microphone is muted. If you could
Sorry,
unmute.
ma'am. I'll just share my screen. You can let
Yeah,
me know if it's visible.
sure.
Uh, just a second. Yeah. Is my screen visible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
It is visible.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to join this session. Like before we begin, can you all tell me like from do we have the department heads here, or can I get a sense of like who's present in this session so that in case if anything relevant is being missed out, I can share some of the resources after this session. And anyways, you're recording this, but just for my understanding.
So, Aarti, we have our school head
Okay.
present in the meeting, Shilpa ma'am. Then we have our learning leaders who are the coordinators in the school.
Okay.
And we have our HR also present here. Apart from that, we have our curriculum team members present here.
Okay.
And the subject teachers are also present here. So we have, it would be great, you can initiate the presentation and post that, yes, we would be expecting the resources too.
Yeah, sure. So in this session, I'm going to get started on my focus is like to introduce a little bit about what asset is, uh, but also to focus on why a school takes a diagnostic test and what are the skills that we test in different subjects to give you an overview of that, and then finally end with what are some of the reports or the insights that you can get after conducting the test. So I'll be focusing on all three stages of the test conduction. So before we begin, this is what EI, like which has been conducting ACID for around 23 years. We've been focusing on the problem of rote learning, that children learn by rote without really understanding the concepts, and we believe that how and what students learn depends to a major extent on what they think they will be assessed. So if you're testing students on their recall ability primarily, like which a lot of typical exams also tend to do, we our approach towards exam is typically at the end of the term or end of the unit, we give them a test and we check whether students have been able to reproduce what they've learned. And also board exams, primarily the focus of board exams was also on testing students recall ability, and the way we prepare children for board was also like piling up 4 5 years question papers, previous sample papers, making students look at these patterns, that these are some of the questions which get repeating on in the board paper. So this is something that we used to make students mark as an asterisk, that these type of questions are very likely to be repeated year on year. So make sure that you prepare for this. And a lot of the whole coaching industry also works this way, that we prepare students that this is likely to come, and this is how you need to prepare. So the surprise is already gone, and we are not really testing students on critical thinking and their ability to apply concepts in unfamiliar areas. We are, and as a result, our students are very good at pattern recognition, at memory. But if we ask the same question, the same skill, if we are testing it in a different way, then students get really confused and they start complaining that this is out of syllabus, and this is too difficult for us. So that's one of the problems that we're trying to focus on, because the purpose of learning is not just to recall. We need to, there are teachers again learn about the Bloom's taxonomy, and we have different way of planning our learning objectives and outcomes. But in the end, very little, like the whole attitude towards learning depends on a lot on like our attitude towards assessments itself, right? Like before we begin, these are some of the ways in which our assessments are different. Can somebody tell me what the question on the left assesses and what the question on the right tries to assess? If you'd like to unmute.
Aarti ma'am, I guess you need to switch the slide, please.
Slide, ma'am?
Which question, ma'am? Where it is?
Can you see this question on perimeter on my
No,
screen?
that is
We can't
what
see.
I-
Okay, I'm really sorry. I'll now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. If you're not able to see me changing slides, please let me know. Uh, yeah, so now can somebody tell me what's the question on the left testing versus the question on the right?
Yeah, may I, ma'am?
Yeah, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah, you're just testing, like on the left, it's like asking them to calculate the perimeter.
Yeah,
Basically, you're assuming they know what is perimeter. Whereas on the right, you're just checking if, they know the basic concept of perimeter, like it's for closed shapes and all that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So in on the left, the question is testing whether students can apply the formula and calculate the perimeter, right? And this is, but before that, students should also know the basic idea of perimeter, which is the sum of the length of the boundary. So also of a closed figure, not an open figure. So can you, looking at the question on the right, there are some shapes given. There is an irregular shape. There is a shape with some straight lines, and there is a shape which is somewhat open. The edges are not closed. So can you guess what students might have answered looking at the question on the right?
Yeah, one
Majority of the
and two.
students were starting to learn about area and perimeter. Can you take a guess?
I think they may go in for one and three because they may think that it's sort of shapes that they have seen, like they're familiar with.
Familiar shapes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. So here are the responses. Shapes 1 and 2 are closed figures, hence they are the ones who have perimeter. But majority of the students have selected shape 1, and I'm talking about a sample size of around 10,000 students from all over the country. So when we ask these kind of questions, this is a more conceptual question. Before you can apply a formula and calculate the perimeter, do you even know what a perimeter is? If I show you a shape which is not maybe familiar to you, a standard shape which is not given in the a textbook, can you still tell me that, as long as it's a closed shape, even if it is not made up of straight lines and if it does not have a specific formula that you are familiar with, do you still understand that it's possible to calculate the perimeter of any shape as long as it's closed, whether it's a square, a rectangle, a pentagon, or a circle, or anything which is even squiggly? You don't have a regular shape. And we also teach students the concept of length and measurement. We teach them, that there are various ways of measuring scale, or an inch tape, or those are just some ways in which you can measure length. But also related to this is, do students understand the concept of length itself, right? What is the distance between the two endpoints? So do these kind of shapes, do they always have to be a straight line, and or can they also be irregular and still have length, right? So this allows knowing this kind of information about how students are actually thinking about common concepts which they should have acquired by this particular age group, helps us understand, if you're giving when we're teaching these concepts, if you're giving them examples of very standard way of looking at perimeter, very textbook definition of perimeter, can students still apply it in unfamiliar context? So the purpose is not to twist the question and trick them, but then if they know the concept of perimeter, they should be able to apply it even in this context, not just in the context of a regular shape like a rectangle or a square. Right, and application of formulas is the next step. So that's what we focus on. Rather than just procedural learning, do students also have conceptual understanding? And this is a small summary of what we focus on while preparing questions. We focus on whether the questions can actually give information to the teachers on whether students are learning mechanically or do they actually understand the concepts. They're designed to be interesting and thought provoking, yet relatable. Nothing which is out of their syllabus per se, but it focuses on the learning outcomes, which the core learning outcomes, rather than borrowing exactly from the textbook. Also, can these questions trigger interesting conversation? Can I, when I test these questions, Is it giving me some valuable information about students' thinking patterns that I can use to, discuss further with my children? The point is not just to test whether students are getting the answer right or wrong. Right or wrong is secondary, but can I understand why my students are thinking in this way? And also, since we construct these questions using we have a wide pool of questions, and also we have a long-term data of around 23 years. We are able to understand year on year that there are some areas in which students tend to struggle with. So these are important to test throughout year on year. There are these skills which are really essential to test year on year. So that's what our focus is. And can we help schools focus on the key understanding or idea behind assessments in the first place, and use assessments to their full potential, not just to promote or demote students or to give them report cards, but can we also use assessment as an information or a planning tool? Now, this is an overview. I'm not going to linger too much on this. School focuses on benchmarking, misconception analysis, and using those insights for informing classroom instructions. Now, can somebody tell me what's the difference between a diagnostic test and a competitive exam? Because again, as it is an external exam, there's a lot of misconception that as it is another competitive exam or a aptitude test. So can somebody tell me how is a competitive exam different from a diagnostic test?
In diagnostic, I believe you're basically the students' concepts, or rather their understanding of concepts. Whereas competitive exams, I believe that we are assuming that they are all, and we are basically looking at their applications of whatever the concepts are.
Okay. So is it the assumption that students know this, don't know this? Is that what you're trying to hinting at?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. For
Okay. Any other
competitive.
responses?
Jane, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
Uh, Competitive exams always, it is held to find out the top performers.
Toppers.
And a diagnostic is for to find out who's weak and who needs improvement, who needs help.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So from our side, these are some of the differences. Competitive exams are very good filtration systems, right? So, like ma'am said, identifying the topper, identifying who is the top ranker, who did not qualify. So after that, there are usually some severe consequences. Am I getting some admission in this college? Am I able to pick the stream of my choice, right? Am I going to go to the next level, whatever that is? Like, for example, IAS or CA or any of those exams, or even JEE and other like competitive exams where there's a large pool of students and you're competing against your peers. And also the focus is on there are severe consequences in whether you clear or not, whether you, and it filters out a large number of students. The pool is to select a few students and reject majority of them so that you can do something, like you can give them admission or you can decide the next course of action. That is why there's a lot of preparation required, because the future gets affected, and that's why it's also high stake, right? But in the case of diagnostic assessments, it the purpose is not to rank students. There might be some benchmarking which is there, but like there is no requirement for students to prepare whatever the level they are at currently. The test is meant to merely understand where are students at currently and where they are stuck, and then can we use this information to plan further action in terms of our instruction. So for
Aarti ma'am,
example, when it comes to a
Aarti ma'am,
diagnostic, like suppose if you're doing a blood test or any health checkup, any diagnostic test you're taking, there are certain markers which are already identified. For example, our hemoglobin, our RBC count, our WBC count. And based on these markers, the purpose is to merely understand what is our state of health, and then the doctor will help us understand what's the further course of action. Do you need any treatment? Do you have any particular ailment? Right. So we all
Aarti,
know that we're
one
supposed
second.
to. Yeah, ma'am.
Aarti, yeah, Jayshree ma'am has a question. If you can address that.
No,
I actually don't have a question. As ma'am said, no, she is on third slide, I think. So I was just
Okay.
checking, is it the same slide ma'am is talking about, or we are talking about the?
Uh,
It was not displayed, so I was just
is
checking
this
it.
now getting displayed?
Yeah, yeah. Now it is visible, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, this is what I'm focusing on. Again, with a diagnostic test, no preparation is required. So, suppose when we're doing a health checkup, like we all know that we need to consume a balanced diet to stay healthy, we need to exercise regularly. But then, just because a health checkup is scheduled, we're not going to start running 5 miles a day, right? Or like, we're not going to start running all of a sudden, oh my God, a health checkup aa raha hai, like, I'm worried about my cholesterol. I need to start running right now, otherwise the doctor will catch me. So that's not the focus of a diagnostic test. You need to maintain your health throughout the year, but then the test will tell you if there's something off. So similarly, in a diagnostic test like ACID, we don't expect students to prepare at all for the assessment. Wherever they are, they can, the test will show, what misconceptions they have, what gaps are there, and the purpose is not to judge students. It's meant to help all students, whether they're the toppers or at the bottom of the class. So I hope that is clear. So if any parent comes to you, you can rest assure them that no preparation is required for the students. But after the test, when the reports come out, that's when the skills need to be built. Again, it's not a one night, it's not a immediate overnight process or a magic that reports have come out and immediately, like overnight we can improve these skills. Skill building takes a lot of time. It's a long term area. So throughout the year, school needs to build on skills. So 1 second, let me just see if you can let me know if my slides are changing again. It's on the. Are you able to see this now? The next slide.
It is the same, ma'am. Diagnostic and competitive,
Okay,
I
then
think.
what I'll do
Now
is
it is changed.
now is it visible?
Yeah, yeah. It's
Okay,
visible.
so I'll not use the full screen mode. I'll just try and extend this, and I hope this is still visible. I'll try to zoom in and increase the size. Is this still clear, ma'am?
Yeah, yeah. We can see it now, ma'am.
Yeah. So, so this is some insight on how do schools currently who take asset, how do they use asset, right? And there are different levels. So suppose you're in year one of taking asset. Um, uh, the initial step will be to train the teachers on analyzing the report, so that you set up some practices for using the reports. Maybe then the next year, the school can focus on, after a couple of years, the school is already used to the system, they're already used to the questions that we ask. And then the school can start, trying to use asset data to also keep their internal assessments in sync with the kind of questions we test in asset. And then after that is also done, and the teachers have started preparing, more competency based questions in their internal assessments. Then the next step would be to work on professional development, and like what more can we do. So all of these things cannot be incorporated overnight. The school needs to decide what is that one thing that we can invest on this year, and then what's our next year plan. So many schools can set up long-term plans for asset implementation. So I recommend your school to also do that. So these are some of the key ingredients that are required for assessment informed instruction. One is, what's the process for analyzing? Do you have a process for analyzing reports? Now, you take the test, the teachers go through the kind of questions, and can we conduct a departmental meeting to, analyze the reports and share insights amongst each other? Then can we set some goals for this year, that this is where my performance is, benchmarking performances, and these are some of the things that we will try out this year. Like for example, by so and so date, my teachers are going to look at the two strong and weak skills and design a few lesson plans, and maybe we'll start incorporating some of these questions in weekly ones. We're going to we are going to keep Monday mornings for discussing more of competency based questions for my students. So what's one process, what are the few things which you can try out to incorporate some of these questions regularly in your lesson plan, right? And then can schools set some process for periodically checking what's working for us, what's not working for us? So the results have come out. I've analyzed my report. I've done some lesson planning or some, I've set some goals for myself, and I'm implementing it. And maybe the next 3 months, can I check that? Okay, I've focused based on the reports. I focused on reading comprehension, and I have tried out these strategies to improve my students' reading. And this is what's working for me. This is not what's working for me. So that's something that I encourage all schools to do. Before we go to the reports, I want to introduce what are some of the skills that we test in ASSET. So ASSET is again we test students across boards. So DPS might be a CBSE board. We also have participants from the ICSE and Cambridge board. So the test has to be somewhat fair for all boards, irrespective of the board. It should not be difficult for any particular board. So we've designed ASSET as a curriculum agnostic test, and the learning objectives that we focus on may not 100% map with CBSE, ICSE, or any particular board, but then we focus on the learning outcomes provided by the National Curriculum Framework, which again is followed by all boards. So that's now I'm going to focus on subject specific skills. Can you all see the slide? English skills.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, irrespective of which subject you take, we divide our skills into some 4 core skills and some sub skills. So, all of these sub skills are not asked to all students. So, for example, in English, we usually test vocabulary in context, grammar usage, and 2 levels of comprehension. One is direct literal comprehension, and one is more extrapolation type questions. So, for example, if a child is in grade, 3 or 4, they start learning poems in their classrooms, but they don't registering mood, tones, and emotion is something which is of a higher level. So that is not asked to grade 3 or 4 level students. Registering mood, tone, and emotion, they usually start coming. This skill is usually tested in grades 7 and 8, right? And but when children are younger, if we want to test whether they have this basic inference skill, we usually ask them to interpret certain lines of poem, or if there is there's a text given, can they analyze or infer some basic ideas from that particular text based on the clues that they are getting in the text? Can they identify the overall main idea of the passage, right? So I'm going to now quickly show you some examples of some of the English questions that we tend to test. And again, with grammar, suppose if students are learning, grammar includes all, nouns, verbs, tenses, you know, so if a child is in grade 3 or 4, they will not start getting complicated tenses like, future perfect continuous. So whatever is there at their grade level, those will be asked under grammar. So I'm going to show you a quick question. For this, I'll need to share my screen so that you can see the passage. Let me know if the passage is visible to you. Can you see the passage called A Pony Named Barley?
No.
Yeah? Okay, so this is a passage. This is something that we have asked to grade 3 in the previous, some of the previous years.
Ma'am, we can't see the passage. We can see only the question.
Now?
No.
Okay, I'm not sure why this is going. Let me end the screen share and start again. Why am I not able to end the screen share?
Now it is stopped. She only left.
It's the same screen, ma'am. No passage.
Visible now.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Aarti, can you hear me?
She's on mute, I think.
Aarti?
Am I now audible and visible?
Yes.
Okay. Uh, so here's the passage, and it's a small passage about a pony named Bali, and we have the difficult words have already been underlined, and it's around I think 100 and 150 pages, 150 words, not more than that, and we also have some images given over here. So when it comes to the question is asking which option has the words from the passage with almost the same meaning. So, what is this question testing? Can you all tell me what is this question testing? It's already mentioned over here.
Synonyms.
Synonyms.
Yeah. So one thing to note is that when we ask grammar questions, we rarely use jargon. We like any question you'll not notice. We don't all we even we for younger children we don't even include the word synonyms, but if they know the word meaning of these words and if they can know that almost the same meaning means that the meaning has to match, then students will be able to answer. So similarly for grammar questions, we don't usually ask questions like identify the transitive word in the given question below or in the given sentence below. So the we focus on functional understanding of grammar or vocabulary. So here the correct answer has already been displayed. It's grin and smile. Those are the similar words with the similar meaning. But you can notice that I've put up a sample from one of the schools based on what common answers that students have selected. You can notice that learnt and taught was one of the common wrong answers which have been selected by this particular school. And this data also matches the national trends. So if you look at the bottom table that shows the national performance for this particular question. So across 12,000 students, again 33% have selected option D. So now can you tell me why students might have selected learned and taught? Are they actually synonyms?
They are not synonyms, they are antonyms
In
because
fact, they're antonyms. So why do you think grade 3 students might be confused with this and might have answered this?
I think they think that learning and teaching probably falls in the same this thing, like learning and teaching is happening simultaneously, so probably they took it in that sense.
Yeah. So when I interviewed some of the teachers whose results I'm displaying, that teacher mentioned that when she's teaching vocabulary, she often makes students underline difficult words, take the dictionary, write down the meanings, and then form sentences with that. And then after that, after the word meaning, antonyms are also taught around the same time. So students are used to this process of learning new vocabulary, but in the context of this question, they are focusing more on word associations rather than word meaning and synonyms. So it's not that the teacher is taught the process is wrong of underlining difficult words and of using the dictionary, but then students need to oftentimes when we teach new words, we tell them to focus on the context. Like for example, when we're teaching younger children words related to family, we usually teach very similar words: brother, sister, father, mother. So similarly, we are teaching students words related to classroom, blackboard, and spellings are taught, word meanings are taught, and then antonyms are taught. So children oftentimes get confused that the question is actually asking not about the opposites and not about associations, but you have to focus on the meaning. And the other thing is students may not really know the meaning of the word grin. So then the task for the teacher is, can I go back to the passage, use some of the sentences as clues, and make students understand that grin and smile means the same thing, and learnt and taught are actually opposites. So that's something which needs to be focused on. Showing another question from English itself. This is a passage. Now, this is not a passage-based question. This is a infographic, right, or a poster, which is showing some information about breeding of how to stop breeding of mosquitoes. And there's a lot of information given on, the difficult words have been highlighted and the meaning has already been given here. What does breeding mean? What does larvae mean? What is a bird bath? And some steps to reduce, prevent the breeding of mosquitoes to keep malaria, dengue, and chikungunya away. That has been mentioned. So the next question is asking, the skill over here is identifying and recalling direct facts from the passage, which is a comprehension question. So here the question is asking, who among these would require the attention of a doctor treating people with malaria? So based on the clues which I've given, the answer has also already been displayed, and the clues from the passage or the text has already been displayed. Can you tell me where students are struggling in this kind of a question? The correct answer is option D, who is shivering, sweating with high fever and body ache. But students have selected options A and C. Any English teacher, English coordinator?
Sheila ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can you interpret why students have selected options A and C here?
A to should be eliminated.
Yeah.
It should be
But
elimination.
students
We
have
need to
selected A.
no. I think we should go for the method of elimination.
Okay.
That would reduce the ambiguity.
Okay, but here, if the question is asking who among these would require the attention of a doctor treating people with malaria, students have selected whose face is red with rash due to some insect bite. So 20% of the students think insect bite is directly causing
exactly.
malaria.
So what is the basic strategy we use is we use elimination. We eliminate B and C, then you are left with A and D.
Okay.
Okay,
So
when you are
B
left
and
with
C.
A and D, naturally, if we have to weigh, D weighs much higher. It's fever, and definitely it needs the attention of the doctor. So
Okay.
our answer should be D. So we need to teach them elimination. We need to teach them the weighing process that may curtail this issue.
Okay. So when I asked some of the other teachers why students are selecting A or why students are selecting C, what we observed was students are not. They're going by their typical assumption that when you get insect bite and mosquitoes cause malaria. So if they're getting bitten by mosquito and if there is a if your face is red, automatically it means that you've contacted malaria. So students are confused with the actual clues which are given, the actual symptoms versus what they think is going to cause malaria. Just because an insect bites you does not mean that you need to immediately go to the doctor. Just some redness does not indicate that you have malaria. So along with redness, or redness can be some surface level. Yeah, your skin is red and insect has bitten you, but then after that you also require other symptoms which are more relevant. For example, high fever, shivering, body ache, and sweating. Only then, when you are facing a combination of these symptoms, you need to go to the doctor. So just because an insect bites you does not mean that you have malaria. And similarly, if you go to the previous passage, the other clue is there are some clues given, like who's sleeping unprotected in the open air. So there are some clues given over here, like for example, don't let water collect in and around your home. Use mosquito nets while sleeping, or insecticide while sleeping. Wear clothes which cover your body. So students might have these experiences of being unprotected and open while playing, and they might believe that just because you're unprotected or sleeping outside without covering yourself, you're getting bitten by a mosquito, and that's something that's causing malaria. So the common everyday experiences are interfering with their actual comprehension or actual attention to the text. So any questions so far regarding the kind of questions? I'll be sharing some sample papers, some sample questions regarding other skills as well. But this is the typical way in which we test English.
I think
Ma'am, I have
Sheila
raised my hand.
Okay, I'm not able to see. Okay,
That's fine, ma'am. Ma'am, we are going to set English question paper for grade 9 asset.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, great.
The query is regarding blueprint. If you could share with us the blueprint, the weightage, and the sample paper, things would become really easier
So
for us.
blueprint is not something we share with any school because every year the paper pattern changes, and that would be against our policy. But we can share some sample questions which will give you grade wise what are the typical kinds of questions we ask, and
So, do
I'll
you
share the
also include the syllabus into it so that we understand? Like you cover only comprehension, grammar, and
okay.
writing skills. So,
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
get the syllabus, the weightage for each section, so that would become like easier for us.
Ma'am, so that's not something that we can release. And in terms of syllabus, we can only share the overall skills. I can't, for example, give you exactly that these are the grammar questions that we're going to ask. Whatever is there in your syllabus, we as it
Okay.
focuses on N-1 level. So suppose if students are in grade 5
So,
right now,
Uh-huh.
the syllabus which was covered in grade 4 will be covered,
Got
and
it.
nothing which is out of the syllabus. And again, we follow the framework given by the national curriculum framework, so you can refer to that document to get the overall idea of what we cover at different grade levels.
So,
Yeah, so
Aarti,
English
Aarti,
will
that
be
is
able to provide some
Aarti.
samples, but the
Yeah,
exact blueprint I cannot provide.
Aarti, 1 minute, huh? That is what
Yeah,
Sheila ma'am is trying to ask. So, Sheila
yeah.
ma'am, they do give us syllabus. There is no problem in that, and I'll share you the syllabus as I get it from them. Okay?
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you.
for this ninth standard EIS test.
Yes,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
And
kindly do it for
ma'am,
all subjects.
Yeah,
If you can
yes,
Yes,
give for
ma'am.
all
science as well, yeah.
all the yes, all three you will get, ma'am. You'll
so
get all
Aarti
three.
ma'am, for
Yeah,
ninth when we are taking exam, so it will be the grade 8 curriculum, right? So
grade
whatever
8
they have
curriculum.
studied.
Yeah. And what I want to emphasize is it's not the curriculum will be from grade 8 level, and it will loosely follow, like it's going to be fair to all, both CBSE, ICSE, and Cambridge. So it may not be one-on-one map, but the overall learning objectives will be the same. And the other thing is we focus on overall skills. So even if some of these questions are not covered in your exact syllabus or anything, students will be able to answer if they read the STEM correctly, right? And now moving on to math, like uh, so to summarize math again, we focus on these are the four main skills. In we divide our skills into number sense and computation, intermediate concepts, word problems, and problem solving and advanced problems. So when children are younger, like when they are in grade 3 and 4, they will not be asked questions on rational and irrational numbers. Those are covered in higher grades under number sense. But when children are smaller, grade 3, 4, they'll be getting basic place value related questions, basic number sense. And then they'll get questions on arithmetic. Similarly, when children go to middle school level, they'll start getting some combined problems on all four operations. They'll start getting some questions on factors and multiples, prime numbers, those kind of things, prime and composite numbers. Then when students start learning integer, they start getting some basic questions on integers and their applications. So again, this is grade appropriate, but overall, like this is the skill. Number sense is what we're trying to test. Then within intermediate concepts, we have basic shapes and geometry. So initially, we ask students on basic recognition and properties of shapes. Then when children come to higher level, grade 8, 9 onwards, they start learning more about surface areas and volumes. So more specific questions on geometry are asked. Again, algebra, pre-algebra is introduced around grade 6 level. Algebra, linear equation, quadratic equation, problems on those, they'll be asked in the higher level. Area and perimeter, again, grade 5, 6 onwards, we start introducing basic problems onwards, and the difficulty level will keep increasing as per the syllabus. Again, in word problem, younger children are asked word problems, word and visual problems related to time, money, calendar. And the more, older children will start getting questions on basic graph reading, basic data interpretation and analysis, more questions related to statistics, more questions related to measurement, and problem solving are more hot questions. Again, these are not out of syllabus, but then they cover multiple concepts in a very application based way. So let me give you an example. So suppose around grade 8, students start learning mensuration, they start learning area and perimeter, ratio and proportion. So a sample question of that might be like, suppose the Indian flag code assigns As per the Indian flag code, the Indian flag is supposed to be of the ratio 3:2. Is length and breadth, the ratio should be 3:2. So I'm giving the child a cloth of 45 meters in length. What's the largest flag I can make out of that? Like, what's the area of the largest flag I can make out of that? So this requires a combination of skills. You have to look at ratio and proportion. You have to look at area and perimeter and some basic algebra to calculate the overall area if only the length is given, right? So those are the kind of application-based problems. It's nothing, completely out of the syllabus, but multiple skills might be needed to solve that problem. Um, right? And here's a small sample from grade 5. So what I wanted to focus on is when we give students a question, each distractor is indicating one type of error. So that's something that teachers need to focus on. So here we have a question which is simply asking what represents 3000s plus 500s plus 42 tens. And in this school, majority of the students have selected option B, which is 3542. This indicates that students have merely, written these numbers. Instead of adding them, they've merely written 3542. And there's a confusion between what 42 tens even means. So students are thinking 42 tens merely means 42 instead of 420. Right? So that's the common misconception. They're not really adding and they're not really representing these numbers properly. So this is a very basic place value and number sense question. And similarly, some of the other options indicate that in option D, students are able to recognize that 42 tens means 420, but they're not really adding. They're just adding 35,000 before 420. So there's another type of error which students are making over here. Right? And in science, we have science is very interesting. It's based completely skill based. We don't divide our question paper into physics, chemistry, and bio. Any question related to any topic as far as it's in the syllabus can be asked using any skill. So let me give you an example. So here's a question on motion. Are you able to see this question? The graph?
No, ma'am.
Analysis of information. Are you able to see the slide?
Ma'am, we can only see number sense and basic arithmetic, class 5.
Okay, I'm not
No,
sure
ma'am,
why.
this is visible. It's visible, ma'am.
It's visible?
Yeah, analysis of information to identify trends or properties, right?
Yeah, yeah. Ma'am, is there a lag on your end? Because I'm changing slides and I think some teachers are able to see it.
It's visible, ma'am.
Okay, great. So here's a very interesting question on motion. Okay, so the question is simply asking which of the following graphs could be of a boy walking along the straight line. And what do you notice here? Everything is given. The answers are given. The options are given. Can you tell me what your interpretation is? What does a child have to do to answer this question correctly? Any science teacher?
He should know the distance, time, graph, how it is drawn, and motion and time lesson is there for 7th standard. So he
Yeah.
should know the basics regarding uniform and non-uniform motion and all.
Yeah, and here the types of motion is not even the word motion itself is also not mentioned. The types of motion are also not mentioned. But they should know that if there is a distance time graph, as the time moves, the distance should also change. That is when, no matter how, whether the rate of change is high or low, whether the person who's walking faster or slower, there should be some change in both the time and the distance moved. So in that case, if there is a change happening both in time and distance, how should the graph look like, right? So both options Q and R represent some way in which the person has moved. And the distance time graph just measures what's the rate at which, like if the time is so and so, how much distance has been covered. It does not measure the path of the motion. So irrespective of whether the boy is walking in a straight line or in a zigzag line, or if the person is walking in whichever path that the person has taken, there should be some movement or some change in both the distance and the time axis. So in that, how do we represent that graphically? That's what's asked over here. And majority of the students here have selected option A, where the line is flat. So here the confusion seems to be the path of the line is being correlated with the way the graph looks. So if they've not answered this question correctly, majority of the students have not understood what is the purpose of this type of a graph. So then the teacher can go back to the concept of motion, the concept of representing motion through graphs, and graph reading skills can be discussed in the classroom. So again here, the type of question is more of analysis and reasoning based question. Reasoning and analysis is the main skill, and the topic being tested is motion. I'm going to show you another question here. Now, this is a question which is testing, there are 4 ice cubes given of the same size and weight. Amit placed them inside 4 empty bottles and closed the list. After 30 minutes, he measured the amount of water produced by melting of the ice cubes. So we know that there are, the ice is melting at different rates. So you have a bottle where the ice is melted and produced, the volume of the melted water is 4 milliliter, and then you have 2 milliliter, 1 milliliter, and 5 milliliter. So Amit is going to a school picnic. Which bottle should he use to carry the fruit juice so that it stays cold for the longest time? Right? So can somebody tell me what is this question trying to test? There's a lot to read. There's some information also given. What should the child know to answer this question correctly? What are some of the ideas which the child should have? I'll try to enlarge this a little bit. Yeah.
It's regarding
Manisha ma'am,
change
you
state of
understand,
matter.
Rekha ma'am, you are not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, change in state of matter and the factors affecting it.
Okay, and specifically when it comes to this question, this child is going on a picnic. So suppose if I have a bottle which is like more of those steel bottles which are uh, if the ice is melting faster, that does it mean that the bottle is going to stay cold, or is it going to stay warm, right? So what does more melting or more volume of water, what does that represent? Is the bottle which I'm using to carry fruit juice, is it cold or hot? Is it cold for a longer time or less time? That's another piece of information that students need to understand to make a decision. Any questions? Is this any feedback related to this question?
This is for which class, ma'am?
This is
This
for
is for
grade
which grade?
5. Yeah.
Grade 5.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're not asking definitions of melting or anything. Like we're focusing on, like, if we give them a context, and we give them some information, are they able to read that information and relate to their everyday, science in everyday life? So if we are giving them a context and they know like basics of states of matter, are they able to observe and infer from that? So again, this is slightly a difficult question, but if we ask students, um, irrespective of what topic you're teaching, whether you're teaching them about plants, whether you're teaching them about states of matter or motion, any type of question can be measured using any skill. So I can ask a very direct question on, I can display some plants with different colors of leaves, and I can ask which of these plants perform photosynthesis, right? A leaf with a red, a plant with a red leaf, a plant with a green leaf, a plant with a yellowish leaf. So can students relate to their understanding of photosynthesis and actually answer correctly and based on the information given? Similarly, if I want to use a more data-based question, a more reasoning-based question, then I'll give them some conditions related to, what's the amount of sunlight that this region gets. I'll share some graph showing that this is the average rainfall in this state, in the state of Rajasthan, in the state of, Kerala. So I'll give them some data with some rainfall, some condition, and then can students predict what are the types of plants which are likely to grow in these areas. The same concept of plants can be asked using a basic conceptual question, and it can be asked using an experiment based question. So I'm giving you some conditions. Can you predict, can you form hypotheses around this experiment? So again, when I share sample papers, you'll get a better idea of that. But again, science is very skill based. We are not testing whether students remember facts. If I give them some information, can they relate whatever they know based on the concepts which they are already learning and relate it? Can they use their skills to think like scientists, right? So that's what we are asking here. So now, one challenge which science teachers in particular might face is, do we focus on skills, concepts, or topics? The way textbooks are organized, you might have a chapter on living and non-living things. You might have a chapter on magnets. So typically, when we teach students, we use we go using the we go using we follow very specific flow of chapters. And one problem which teachers might encounter is when we focus on chapter or content based approach to teaching science, we don't focus on skills or underlying concepts. For example, we do have experiment based skills which are expected in all CBSE ICC students are expecting students to uh, be scientists and to apply their scientific thinking skills. These are some of the common learning objectives expected across boards. But then when we teach using content, when the focus is too much on content and not on skills and concepts, we are not exposing students to a lot of the skills which are required to answer these kind of conceptual questions clearly. So if a question is asking in this way, only then students can answer. If you give them some more information, then students really struggle. What do I need to do to answer this question correctly? What is it even asking? Students tend to get confused, and then those complaints come that this is out of the syllabus or this is too difficult for our students. So we are already telling you that this is a challenge which is likely to be faced by science teachers and students attempting science papers. But then our main goal is, can we focus on skills and concepts rather than just the content? So even if you're teaching magnetism, can we make students use their faculty of observation, of data analysis, of interpretation to use some of their information and answer the question correctly? So again, this skill list will be very useful for you all. If you can see this, if you can see the skill list, try to see how any question can be, when you come across the question paper, or when students are attempting the question, try to focus not just on what concept is being tested or what things should you know, but how do you relate concepts and skills and content together to make students proficient in competency based questions. Okay, so next I'd like to go to the reports part. What are the kinds of reports we give to the school once the school has taken the test? We have three kinds of reports. One is the student report, the teacher report, and the management report, so that all stakeholders get the relevant information to plan the next course of action. To start with the student report, individual student reports are shipped to the school, and I'll just zoom this a little bit so that you can see clearly. Okay, so in the student report, the first component is that the student will be able to see the highest and lowest performing skill for each subject. This is a summary. So in this report, you can see that interpreting the lines of the poem is a high performing skill, whereas knowing correct spellings and phonics is the low performing skill. So skill wise, we give students a summary. This is customized for each child. So whichever skills are weak and strong, that's mentioned over here. Apart from that, we also give the child a detailed assessment of which questions have they answered correctly, which questions have they answered incorrectly. So if the accuracy for that particular skill is below 25% for a particular, so for example, here arithmetic operations has been identified as a weak skill, which is marked with a W. So if the accuracy is below 25%, that means that really is something that the child needs to focus on. Again, if the accuracy is higher than 75%, then it is identified as a strong skill. And there are a minimum number of questions which should be asked in that particular skill, through which we can assign these labels strong and weak. And the child can go to the exact question paper and look at the questions which they answered incorrectly and revisit them. Finally, we also provide the children with the answer key and the error list. So here is an error list for math. You can notice that for question number 1, the difficulty that the child is facing is that the child is unable to interpret the question correctly. It's an interpretation problem. But whereas for question number 4, the error is that the child is lacking numbers and it's a skill gap. So there are different types of errors which students can make depending on the option that they've selected. Is it an interpretation problem? Is it a skill gap? Or is it, the fact that the child is unable to apply arithmetic operations in a particular question, right? It's not a reading problem. It's more than that. So we identify the error list, and also we show what is your result versus the overall school's result in the answer booklet. After this, we also give students, some practice questions. So, for example, if factors and multiples and application of in daily life, they've been identified as 2 weak skills. So, after each subject's report, we give them 4 to 5 practice questions for that particular weak skill. So, both weak skills are covered and practice questions are given, and then there are also the answer key along with explanation given. So once students know that these are some of my weak skills, the parents can actually sit with their children and make them practice those practice questions. So that's the student report. Then we have something called the teacher report. So teacher report also contains similar information, but for the entire class. So this is 7F's teacher report. It contains the skills which were measured for 7F, and the question numbers are mentioned, so you can check the report alongside the question paper and see what are the questions which are asked under punctuation and sentence formation. What are the questions asked under knowledge of grammar concepts? So you can circle the individual questions and see the performance for your section versus performance for all the sections combined, all of grade 7 combined, and the performance against all the students in grade 7 who are who have participated from the rest of the country. So right now, if you can see the table for the red highlighted skills, can you tell me what is your interpretation? Is this what's the performance like against the national average? Is this a weak skill? Is this a strong skill? Anybody can answer?
They have performed better as compared to the national average. I think they have performed better.
Yeah, so the performance is better than national average. And can you tell me if this is section F? So for understanding the use of grammar concepts, is this section doing better or some of the other sections doing better?
Some of the others have done, I think, for this skill, some other sections have done better.
Might have done better. And can you look at some of the other skills given below and tell me, although the school has done better than national average, so it's better than the 37% which overall in the country students have received. Can you tell me, is this a strong skill overall for the school or a weak skill?
Overall, I think it will fall into a weak skill because they've done better, I think, in identifying synonyms and antonyms and other words. I think that has been their strong skill over here.
That's a really strong skill.
Yeah.
So when we look at the results, we look at both the school's individual results and relative results compared to maybe other sections or the country. So this really helps the school set priorities. So there are some, if your school is generally always doing better than the national average, right? So, this information that we are doing better in punctuation is not really helping you. You're doing better than the national average in terms of punctuation and sentence formation, but your students are capable of doing much better in general. So if in synonyms you're getting 83%, the school can actually introspect why are my students doing so well in synonyms and antonyms, but really struggling with grammar or with punctuation, you know. So this really helps the school as a whole set specific goals for themselves based on what their goals are. But if there is a school which is doing worse than national average, then the first step is, if other students in the rest of the country are finding it so easy, why are my students finding this difficult? So that's how you can look at your own results. And so after this, we also provide a small summary of the school's individual strong and weak skills. So if you don't have the time to revisit the entire question paper, and throughout the year, if you want to work on two things, it helps you set some priorities that this year, for the next, at least for the next 3 months, I'm going to, although I need to teach everything, I need to teach them vocabulary, I need to teach them reading and grammar, but grammar is something that my students are really struggling with. I'm going to look at the specific grammar students questions where my students struggled, and then I'm going to set some targeted remediation for the next 2 to 3 months, and then see, you know, whether there's been an improvement in grammar or not. So this really helps school prioritize. And then next, we also have something called the the student performance table. So for the entire class list, you get your performance table for each question, and you can look at what's the correct answer, what's the answer for each question, what's the correct answer for each question, and what's the percentage of students who answered it correctly within my section versus within my school, across all sections and across the country. So at a glance, you can see, and when you look at the column vertically, the highlighted ones over here, you can see if there is any common pattern of misconception, right? So in question number 4, if the correct answer is A, you can already see that most of my students have selected option B. So there is some pattern of misconception which I can already notice in my students looking at this question. So you can make notes here. You can identify which are the weak performing questions and the strong performing questions, and see which ones you want to take back to your classroom. And on the right, you can see individual students' performance. So you can highlight the questions whose raw score or percentile scores are really low. You can suppose if you have a PTM coming up, you can mark some of these questions, look at their individual reports, and then have a conversation with their parents that, you know, these are some of the skills where your child is struggling. And so this is for your reference to understand where your class is doing. And if you want to design some remediation, you can actually select those individual students who are struggling and maybe design some extra workshops for these students. Apart from this, we also show you some in the report itself. We show the teachers what are some of the skills which the students, what are some of the 3 questions where the students struggled with compared to the rest of the country, and which the students found it easier compared to the rest of the country. So we show that as well, and we show some, we give some explanations for some of the common wrong answer questions. Let me quickly open one of the Teacher My books and show you a sample. Please let me know if you can see the report. Otherwise, I'll share my screen again. Uh, so I'm opening any random teacher report. Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this is what I've already covered. The table I've covered, the overall skills I've covered, and then here we are giving you a summary of the most difficult question, 3 most difficult questions that your students found it difficult. So here you can notice if the correct answer is C, and the 10% of your students got it correct, whereas 61% of the rest of the country got it correct, right? Students in the rest of the country. So this shows a very clear gap that these are some questions where your school is finding really difficult, your class is finding it very difficult. So similarly, there are some questions which your school found it really easy. So here you can notice that if the overall national average is 36%, your school's average is 80%, which shows that students are finding these kind of questions really easy. So you can try and focus on why, if there are some strengths in my school, what are some of the best practices which have contributed to these strengths? Why are my students doing so well in some of these questions? So it's not just like the point is to also focus on the root cause. Do I know my students well enough to understand why are they, if they're finding it easy, how can I replicate this performance in other skills also? Is there something specific which is contributing to these strengths, right? So that reflection activity is really helpful for the teachers. And then we have the common wrong answers. We are giving you the light gray indicates the correct answer. The dark gray indicates the common wrong answer for your school versus the rest of the country. And then also the explanation is given if why students might have selected this particular answer. So we've done this for some of the three questions. So if the other questions, you can always go back to the table and do this kind of an analysis yourself. And I'll also be guiding you once the results come out. We'll conduct a post-asset analysis session where we'll be discussing other questions in more detail. Finally, we also have practice questions given in the teacher report. So if this is the weak skill, then we are going to give, this is the weak skill one. We're going to give you some sample questions related to that weak skill so that you can take it back to your classroom and give them more practice. Again, the explanations are also provided. And finally, you have some note section so that you can, once you've analyzed your report, you can write some notes on your interpretation and design the next course of action for your particular school. So I hope that was clear. And finally, we have the management report. This is not really relevant to individual teachers, but
Bhati ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah, ma'am.
Like you said, you have shown the report. So whatever weak skills are there
Yeah.
after the assessment, you
Yeah.
will be providing the report. So apart from those sample questions, what help we will be getting so that we improve that from your end, or every we have to do something. So I just
Yeah.
wanted a
So it's
clarity.
a two-way thing. I'll just,
Yeah.
that's a very important thing. So one is that skills are not built overnight. It's not
Yes.
as good as giving, some of the interventions that we'll be focusing on is, I'll just come to that. After the assessment, the reports take about a month to come, right? We
Okay.
benchmarking reports. We for that we need to collect the responses and OMR sheets from the entire country. So then, by the time it's shipped back to you, it takes about a month. So meanwhile, we'll be releasing your provisional reports without the benchmarking, only your class's performance without the national average. We'll be sharing some of the preliminary results over email, and we'll be sharing an early remediation workbook. So you can use a template. We can share a template with you, and you can straight away start looking at some of the three important strong skills and weak skills for your particular class. And you can look at the question paper and start writing what trends you observe. So that's a pre-work which teachers themselves will do. And then after the results come out, I'll be conducting a post-asset analysis workshop where subject-wise we'll be focusing on the common trends. What are some of the weak skills across the grades? What is your overall performance in various skills? And then can we notice some patterns of misconceptions across various questions? So given the time, usually I take like a 40 to 45 minute session per subject. So separately for English teachers, separately for math and science teachers. And I won't be able to discuss all the questions, but I discuss the overall trends. And after my session, teachers are requested to, set some goals for themselves and plan remediation strategies. So for remediation, again, I'll be sharing some general resources, but looking at your own classes patterns and your own students misconceptions, you'll have to plan some remediation and implement them. And after that, the next step is again, can the department heads conduct a department meeting with the subject teachers to understand what are some of the things we have implemented so far and what has worked for us, not worked for us, right? So that's a continuous process of reviewing our results, implementing, drawing some insights, and then taking those insights back to the classroom. And the other thing that we also give is we have something called an asset question a day. So there's a website called AQAD that I'll just open that on the net. Let me know if you can see my webpage. So this is the website called AQAD, which is affiliated with the CBSE board. And every day we display one asset question a day for various subjects. So this is the schedule given over here. Monday we give questions for English, Tuesdays for math, Wednesdays for science, and again Thursdays for math. So as per the schedule, if you log in and if you register yourselves and add your class, the class and subject that you focus on, and this is how you can register. You can mention your city, mention your school. In your inbox you'll get one question a day for your particular subject. And the students are also requested to join this. So once students register, they'll be getting these kind of questions. So this is today, 23rd September. That's the question. And this is for class 3. So similarly, as per whatever class they've registered, they'll get a question. This is for class 6. So what many schools do is they discuss.
Ma'am, I think we are not able to see the correct slide on the screen.
Are you able to see my web page? The AQAD web
I
page?
can see improved teacher effectiveness now.
Okay, let me just share the link with you over chat itself so you can open it right away. This is the link. Are you able to see now on my screen as well?
Okay, 1 minute.
Ma'am, is my screen visible with the AQAD website? I've opened the website in front of you.
Ma'am, your screen is there, but I can't see anything. Others, if they can see, because
Yes,
there
ma'am.
was
We have the link. Correct.
Okay. And are you able to see the link opened
Yes.
up on my
Yes. What
screen?
is the tense and voice of the news headline given
Yeah,
below? Right?
yeah, great.
Yeah.
So this is today's question. So similarly, you can ask children to register and they'll get these questions in their inbox. They can submit their answer here using the submit button and add their explanation, and the results will be revealed the next day in their inbox. So this is one way in which many schools, what they do is they download the question or they take screenshots of the question, they display it on their notice board, and every Monday they devote some 10 to 15 minutes to discuss question in the classroom. So this is one way through which regularly you can give students exposure to competency based questions, and you're not waiting for asset like once a year exam to give students exposure. This is happening continuously throughout the year, and this helps to bring this habit of thinking more logically, more critically. And again, you're going slightly away from what you typically do in the textbook, but the habit is like to encourage classroom discussion. So many schools, what they do is they divide their classroom into 4 rows. So whoever is selecting section option A, raise your hands. So according to that, a lot of group activities are done on Monday mornings in many schools, and vice versa for Tuesday mornings, the first 10-15 minutes. So once the students have selected the answer live in classroom, then you can ask them, you can interview them, why are you selecting option A, why do you think option A is correct, can you give your justification? So a lot of schools do these kind of question based, inquiry based learning in their classrooms. So that's another thing that we do, that we emphasize on. And then the other thing is, again, once the reports are out, teachers can give these practice questions and maybe design some worksheets for their children to improve on their skills. So this is a format which can be used by schools for analysis, for internal analysis. The reports have come out. You write down what's your weak skill, what's the question number, what's the misconception, and what's the remediation strategy. And what can you do in one period versus what can you do in the long term, like for the entire term. So planning this and then implementing this really helps schools to improve their performance in the long run. So that's all I have from my side. You've been very patient throughout all of these technical glitches. I'm going to stop sharing. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know. I hope this was useful and you got the idea of the skills, the type of questions, and the reports that asset contains. Uh, Teachers, if you have any questions, you can unmute. Otherwise, we can end the. Yeah, Rekha ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So after the diagnostic test, what would be the action plan from your side? Will you be providing us with extra worksheets, or will you be providing us with the support which?
No, ma'am, we don't normally provide worksheets. We have some resources which are freely available on the CBSE. You can refer to that. But the actual plan is very school specific, right? We are not the right people. We don't know your students. We have some data with us and we can share those insights with you and we can help teachers decode and interpret the reports. But the actual plan of implementation has to be the responsibility of the teachers and the school itself. So we can share some we can share a template for lesson planning like I've shared over here where teachers can write down this is the core, this is the strong skill, this is the weak skill, this is what my students are thinking. But the larger process of implementation and taking these reports to the classroom has to be done by the teachers. And from our side, we have an orientation session. We have a post-asset analysis session. So there'll be a session done, but after the session, like based on the reports, the session will be done, but the pre-work and the post-work will have to be done by the teachers. Yeah, Chitra ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Like I just have the skills and everything that has been shared with us
Okay.
for mathematics. So it says, for example, the core skills are intermediate concepts, geometry, and algebra. And it says the sub skills are algebra concepts and applications.
Yeah.
But what, how will we know what exactly are the students going to be tested on? Like, I'm not asking you to share the questions,
Yeah.
but like algebra as such would be a very vast concept.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do we know, like,
So whatever's in the syllabus. So if children are smaller, it could be finding the value of x if some context is given. So that is as per the syllabus only. It's nothing out of the syllabus. The kind of questions might vary. You might get some, in mathematics, there are just a few ways in which you can test things using an MCQ. We might give you some problem where the answer is given and you have to find what's the answer. You have to select the correct answer. There might be some questions where the four steps are mentioned and the student might have to find the error in the particular question. But whatever it is, it's as per the syllabus. Like n-1 level. So within algebra, if you have basic operations or word problems related to algebra, finding the value of x, finding finding the coefficient, what's the coefficient. So whatever is there in the syllabus, it's all related to that. I'm just share like the scales is the overall big picture that this is what we cover as per these are the scales which are covered. And then when you actually see the question and when you read the question, you'll understand that what is it might be a procedural question where the child has to identify the algorithm for solving the problem, or else it might be do I know the idea of balancing. So suppose if I'm giving you an equation with both sides, am I able to understand what balancing means, or am I just looking at equal to as a operation, and only here there might be some confusion related to the problem of balancing. Again, there might be some confusion related to understanding what powers and coefficients are. Do I understand the degree? So whatever is as per the syllabus, it's only that.
okay, okay, thank you.
Right. So similarly with grammar also, tenses or whatever that is, there might be some question where there are typically sentences given where the child has to enter the correct tense in that particular sentence. And sometimes the question may not even mention the word tense. Can you just fill in the blanks? Do you know what needs to go over here? So the questions are pretty simple that way, but if they have to understand that what will actually fit over it. They have to eliminate based on the context.
Ma'am, would you provide us the subject grade specific learning outcomes?
Ma'am, that I cannot provide. It's not, again, it keeps changing across the curriculum. I request the school to refer to the National Curriculum Framework. We don't have like a very exact syllabus sheet that I can share with you at this point. We have the overall skills and the overall learning outcomes which are outlined by the NCF. You can follow that. Otherwise,
Um, Sadia ma'am, they align with NCF completely, so you do not have to worry around that. They will share you a syllabus that you can easily help to map for N-1 level. Okay.
Okay, Aarti.
yeah. So, ma'am, you can actually download the NCF document. It's all, very, it's given, I think, on the website itself. So that has all the, learning levels and stages given, middle school, high school, preparatory stage, if you've noticed that. And then there are some learning outcomes also given. And so that would be really useful. And it's not because we cater to all, all boards. We don't have a specific, the way we, do our, plan or prepare the question paper, it may not match exactly with this is the textbook, this is where we are taking it from. Again, all of these questions are very unique. So we have our own question bank, we map it with the curriculum outcome, and we keep upgrading it if there is any change in the overall, NCF. So that's how we prepare. Otherwise, it's not as organized as, like, the school's internal paper.
Will there be any follow-up assessments? Like it's only a yearly once exam, and after that, if we work on these children and once they have improved, will there be any follow-up kind of assessment by you?
Ma'am, we don't usually do it. We offer asset year on year, and if the school takes asset again the next year, the skills are the same, the syllabus is the same. We can the reports include a year on year analysis of where has the batch improved or declined. But it's for the school to. We also provide like an internal assessment solution for cares. If you want more details on that, you can ask Himanshu and the sales team. Otherwise, asset is done just once a year. We also do asset, like we have 2 rounds of asset. So some schools do opt for summer round and winter round. The question papers are different. It's not the same question paper, but the level and the learning outcomes are just the same. And the schools opt for summer and winter round based on their calendar. Like for example, some schools are really busy during August, so then they are free during December. So they take the December round, and some schools are really busy during December with sports day and all of that. So then they tend to take the August round. We have very few schools which are taking both summer and winter in the same year, and then that is a very specific ask. So they like to
Aarti,
compare.
I would also like to a little bit give clarity to my
Yeah,
team. So
yeah,
diagnostic test and a regular test are two different things.
yeah.
Diagnostic test comes with student and teacher's feedback. Wherein teacher also get a feedback that if a multiple concept is not clear to the children, how she may go ahead by again re-clarifying that concept. So it doesn't need another diagnostic team by any external team. So you can internally correct that concept and retest it at your own level. Okay. And the cares is something different.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it in detail in later with you team.
Yeah, ma'am would be the right person to decide and discuss that. So I'd like to end the session. We've exceeded the time quite a lot. Thank you for making the time and for being so patient. And again, I'll be sharing the minutes of the meeting with Aarti ma'am. And later on, if you have any questions, you can let me know. I look forward to meeting you again after the post asset analysis session. And don't worry, it's a diagnostic test. Don't have to prepare students right now. But once the reports are generated, then the real work starts. So you don't have to, please don't put that pressure on yourselves that I have to tell my students these are the kind of questions which are coming. We highly recommend that students don't prepare at all and they just show up with whatever they know. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Aarti, for detailing so much. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Ati ma'am.
I'm sorry, Jeshi ma'am, I had leadership meet, so could not join on time.
I only joined it late. I was conducting meeting with teachers and I got a message from ma'am. So I
No worries.
only joined 20 minutes late.
हाँ हाँ ठीक है मैम इधर इधर still any difficulty team is facing you can connect anytime to me and Aarti Pathak ma'am ठीक है so we'll
ठीक है.
clarify on this if anything is stuck anywhere yeah
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
thank you